Hello and welcome. This is a video on map reading for senior NCC cadets. In this video, we will be covering all these subtopics. For the moment, we will be skipping military symbols. We will be discussing all these subtopics in detail, and towards the end of the video, we will see how to use the map for finding own location on the ground and correlate map with the ground. To begin with, let's see what is a map. A map, as you all know, is a representation of selected natural and man-made features. Now, why selected natural and man-made features? Because it's not possible to depict everything that is seen on the ground on a flat sheet of paper. And of course, these are reproduced on a sheet of paper to a definite scale. For example, 1 kilometer on ground is depicted by, say, 1 centimeter on the map sheet. So a map gives the relative geographic positions and elevations of the features on the ground on a sheet of paper. And how do we do this? With the help of symbols, color differentiations and contours. So basically, to sum up, map can be said to be an inventory of the physical features on the surface of the earth. Now, what is the science of making maps called? It is called cartography. And who makes all these maps in India? It is the Survey of India. Now, there are various types of maps depending on their scale and use. One of the most commonly used map in our day-to-day life is our rail oblique road maps, which you have seen yourself. Some of the various other maps are statistical maps. You've got meteorological maps. You've got rainfall pattern maps. You've got soil maps, political maps, which is shown here in the viewfoil. The physical map represents the physical relief of any region, that is the delineation of the hills and the plains, the distinguishing of high ground and low ground, and the important river systems. This is the average annual rainfall map showing the amount of rainfall received by various regions based on the averages over a long period of time. The dark blue ones receive the maximum amount of rainfall in a year. In the beginning of this video, we've seen what is used to represent the features on the ground on a sheet of paper using symbols. Now, these symbols are called conventional signs, and the exact position of the object being represented is the center of the symbol. Now we'll see some of the commonly used conventional signs used to depict features on the ground. The most common of them being easily identifiable by you, I think, are roads, railway tracks, contours. There is a difference in the broad gauge railway track here. What the various towns, built up areas shown by these signs. Now here you can see temple, chhatri, church, mosque, Eidgah, tomb, graves. Now this has been highlighted here, as you can see. This is one of the most important questions in the certificate exams, repeated questions in almost all the question papers. The international boundary here, demarcated, undemarcated boundary, district, subdivision, taluk, tehsil. These are triangulated heights, benchmark, post office, police station, bungalows. You would appreciate that whatever is seen on the ground cannot be as such reproduced on a sheet of paper because of the size, obviously. So we refer to what is known as scales to depict the features on ground on a map sheet. So by scale, what it means is the proportion which the distance between 2 points on the map bears to the actual distance between the same 2 points on the ground. So for example, 1 kilometer on the ground, or 2 kilometers, generally basically what we do is 2 kilometers on the ground is shown as 1 centimeter on the map sheet. There are two methods of expressing a scale. The first one would be in words. For example, 1 inch to 1 mile, it means that 1 inch on the map represents 1 mile on the ground. And the second would be as a representative fraction. Now this is the scale expressed in the form of a fraction. If the scale of a map is given as say 1 upon 100,000, this means that 1 unit of the map represents 100,000 of the same unit on the ground. In the army, we employ mostly the 1:50,000 maps and 1:250,000 maps. 1:50,000 maps, if you convert that into representation fraction or in words, it will be 1 kilometer is to 2 centimeters. So 1 kilometer on ground is represented by 2 centimeters on the map sheet. Now we'll go across some of the commonly used technical terms and the various topographical forms which one comes across whenever there is a discussion on map reading. The commonly used technical terms are bearing, benchmark, contours, gradient, grid lines, grid north. You may go over the explanation part of these technical terms. We'll be seeing more of grid lines in the topo sheets, or whenever we come across a topo sheet and we are required to set up the map, find out the own position, and thereafter map to ground and ground to map exercises are given. Grid north is the direction of the north-south grid lines on a map. Some of the topographical forms are as given in this slide: basin, saddle, crest, dead ground, defile, escarpment, knoll. Again, you may just go through the explanation part in these. It is self-explanatory. Plateau is a tabletop, an elevated region of considerable extent, generally fairly level. Ridge, spur, a piece of high ground jutting out from a range of hills into lower ground is known as spur. Watershed is the line separating the water flowing into two different river systems. Basically, you have the ridge and the watershed connected there because ridge allows the water to flow into opposite directions. Since contours are one of the most important topographical forms, we'll slightly go into more detail. Contours are basically imaginary lines joining all the points of equal elevation or altitude. The elevation, the other term for elevation is altitude. So they have to be equal altitude. All the equal altitudes on ground are connected through a line. The line is imaginary and the altitude is measured above the mean sea level. Contour interval is the interval between two successive contours. It is also known as the vertical interval, usually represented as VI. It's a constant for a given map in terms of say 2 meters, 4 meters or 10 meters. Coming on to slopes, how do you depict slopes using contour lines? If the contour lines are closer together, it means this slope is steeper. If they are farther apart, then it's a gradual slope. A type of slopes, you have got convex and concave. The convex slope is the one which bulges outwards, and the concave slope is the one which curves inwards. We've got certain pictures in the successive slides. Will be slightly more clear in those pictures. There it is. The first two figures here, it's easily identifiable. This is a gentle slope, whereas this is a steep slope. And how do you depict a gentle slope? In terms of contour lines, you can see the contour lines, the individual contour lines are spaced farther apart. What is the contour interval here? It's 100 meters. Whereas if the slope is steep, the contour lines are spaced closer together, even though the contour interval is 100 meters here. Coming on to the concave and convex slopes. Now this, as was mentioned in the previous slide, it curves inwards and this bulges outwards. Now see the difference in the contour lines. The concave slope, you have the contour lines spaced farther apart, whereas in a convex slope where the bulge is coming outwards, the lines are spaced closer together. As we go up, it becomes gentler and the contour lines are moving apart. Now the difference between a hill and a plateau, as we have seen earlier, a tabletop kind of a arrangement here. See the contour lines, because this is steep, this area is steep, you have the contour lines closer here. There are no contour lines because why? The elevation or the altitude here from the mean sea level is generally the same. Since the contour interval here is again 100 meters, there is hardly any difference in elevation above 1500 meters here till the top of the plateau. That is why we don't have another contour here. Whereas the hill, you see the point or the top of the hill is shown by a circle here, and both the slopes on either side are depicted using lines closer together or farther apart. A gorge in high altitudes is where the vertical erosion by river is more prominent. You see this figure? This is very steep slope and there is elevation here on either side. It's a deep valley, a small place where the river flows. So this is how the contour lines are depicted. A spur we've seen earlier, it's a tongue of land projecting from higher ground into the lower. See this and see how the contour lines are drawn. Now we'll see what is a grid system. Firstly, coming on to the definition of grid. A map is covered in a network of purple lines running north, south and east, west. These form a series of small squares all over the map. These are known as grid lines. Now what is the purpose of grid line? Is to give grid references or take grid references from a map and to facilitate measurement of bearings. Now here you see the globe. You can see the equator running at the center. The Tropic of Cancer is in the northern hemisphere and the Tropic of Capricorn is in the southern hemisphere. It lies 23.5 degrees up north here and 23.5 degrees down south here. We've got the South Pole and the North Pole. Now we'll see how to give a grid reference. There are 4 rules to remember. The first one is that the grid reference is always given as an even number of figures, a 4 number or a 6 figure grid reference or even 8 figure grid references. It's always even in number. And the first 2 or first 3 numbers or the first 4 numbers are always depicting the easting lines first. that is the lines which go from west to east. The northings are from south to north. These will be clear when you see the actual topo sheet. The numbers increase from west to east. The easting numbers, or the numbers given on the easting lines, increase from west to east. That is the cardinal directions. If you, in normal parlance, if it is said, it will be numbers increase from left to right. Similarly, the northings are the lines, the horizontal lines which move from south to north or from bottom to top. For the 6-figure references, the third and the sixth figure represents the smaller dimensions in the square. It will be more clear in the subsequent slides. And if a general grid reference is to be given, for example, if in a square there is only one prominent landmark, for example a bridge, temple, then a 4-figure grid reference would suffice. Now let's learn how to give the reference of a grid. For example, this is a topo sheet bounded by the eastings, which are the vertical lines, and the northings, which are the horizontal lines. Now what we have learnt in the previous slide is the various rules, the 4 different rules which shall be used to give the grid references. Now here you can see the eastings, as I said, the vertical lines are increasing from left to right or from west to east. You must be very clear on these things. The vertical lines, the numbers on the vertical lines increase from left to right. They are called the eastings. Northings are the lines which go towards north. That's an easier way to remember. Northings are the horizontal lines which move from bottom to top or south to north in terms of cardinal directions. And you are required to give the grid references of these 4 squares. Now let us see how do we give the grid reference of square number 1. So as one of the rules says, the grid reference will be given as eastings and northings, and eastings should be referred first. So what are the lines which are enclosing this square? They've got 2 vertical lines and 2 horizontal lines. As I said, the vertical lines are called eastings, horizontal lines are called northings. So you've got easting number 27 and easting number 28 and the northing number 55 and 56 enclosing this square. So when we give the grid reference of this square, it will be easting first, and we'll have to take the lower figure 27 and the lower figure of the northings. So 27 and 55 is how you refer to this square in terms of a 4-figure grid reference. Similarly, if you see 4, square number 4, the first is 28, right? Easting number 28 and northing number 54. So it is 28 and 54. Similarly, for 2 and 3, these are the 4-figure grid references. Now we'll see how to give a 6-figure grid reference or a 8-figure grid reference. Now this is a square bound by eastings, the vertical lines 25, 26, and the northings 52 and 53. Now this square has got, say for example, 2 important landmarks. Now you have to give the grid reference of these 2 landmarks. Now let us first refresh how to give the grid reference, the 4-figure grid reference. It is what? 25 and 52. That is the 4-figure grid reference of this square. Now how to give the grid reference of this landmark here? So again the rule says eastings first and secondly the northings. So first is 25 and this entire square is divided into 10 equal parts and this is coming in the third part. So we take 25, 1, 2, 2 because the same principle applies here. If this square, then we take the lower figure. So 25, 2, and next would be northings 52. It is between 7 and 8. Similarly, you have to divide this whole line into 10 equal divisions, and this landmark falls between 7 and 8 divisions. So you have to take the lower of these two lines. So it is 52, 7. So what is the grid reference of this landmark? It is 25, 2, 52, 7. Similarly, for this landmark also it is 25, 7 and 52, 2. So 2, 5, 7, 5, 2, 2 as is shown here. Now for a greater accuracy, you can also go in for an 8-figure grid reference to say exactly where this lies. So how will you give it? We'll just see. I'll take up this. So it will be first 25, of course, 25, then it is between second and third. So it will be, say if this figure or landmark is at the center of this square, then it will be at 2, 5. Again you have to divide this line into 10 equal parts, and if this is lying exactly at the center, then it is the fifth division here. So you can write 2, 5, 2 and 5 here again. Then you have to write the northings 52. Then again between these two divisions, 7 and 8 divisions, 10 divisions, equal divisions, and if this landmark is exactly at the center, it is 7, 5. So you write 7, 5. Right. So this is a 8-figure grid reference. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the first two figures is the eastings, and in between here you have 52, which is the northing. This is how the grid reference is given in terms of 6 figures or 8 figures, 4 figures which you have already seen. Now try for this 8 figure. It will be 2, 5 is the easting. We'll just circle it, 2, 5. Then it is, say for example, if this landmark lies exactly in the center between 7 and 8 and also 2 and 3, so eastings is between 7 and 8. So you have to write 7, 5 here, and then the northings 52. We'll just circle it here. It is between 2 and 3. So you write 2, 5 if it is exactly in the center. So the same rule applies. Say for example, something is towards one end. Say for example here, this is the landmark here. So it will be between 4 and 5. It will be somewhere, say less than 4, 5. So you can take 4, 3, 4, 4, or between these two lines 6 and 7, it is less than 6, 5. So 6, 3 can be taken. Moving on, cardinal points or the cardinal directions, north, south, east, west. The various types of north. This is an important question as far as the certificate exams are concerned. The difference between true north, magnetic north, and grid north. Now this is the true north, the line which moves up through the south pole through the north pole. Basically line joining between the north and the south poles. Magnetic north is a direction which is seen in a magnetic compass, and grid north in a topo sheet is the north established by the map maker. The lines on the grid lines give the general direction of the north. The difference between true north and magnetic north is called magnetic variation, and the amount of magnetic variation depends on the time and the location of that place. The angular difference between grid and true north is called the angle of convergence or the grid convergence. The service protractor A Mark IV is an instrument used for plotting and measuring bearing on the map. It is an essential link between the compass and the map. With the help of the protractor, the magnetic bearings have been converted to grid bearing and transferred to the map. Now if you see, this is the service protractor which we use for plotting the map readings or the compass readings. The length is 6 inches and it is 2-inch wide. Two sides of the service protractor, as you can see here. The main purpose of the protractor is to measure angles and bearings as described previously. The protractor also shows on both its sides or faces a number of more common map scales. In this face of the service protractor, you can see an arrow here at the center. So when you are drawing a bearing on the map of an object on the ground using your magnetic compass, then if the forebearing is less than 180 degrees, then you place the protractor in such a way that the point at which the bearing is to be marked out will be placed exactly here, and the degrees will be measured clockwise in this direction. So it is 10, 20, 30 up to 180 here, 170 and 180 here. And supposing the measurement is more than 180 up to 360 degrees, you will flip the service protractor onto this side, center being the same here, and then read the magnetic bearing from again clockwise direction 180, 190 towards 360. As I already told you, the degrees are marked in a clockwise direction starting from the left hand bottom corner up to 0 to 180 degree and from 180 to 360 degrees. When we talk about maps, we at times are required to convert the bearings from say magnetic to true bearing to grid bearing, and so on and so forth. We should know what is the difference. We've already seen what is a magnetic bearing, what is a true bearing. Now if we are required to convert the magnetic bearing or the bearing which is measured using a compass to true bearing, which is the line joining north and the south poles, then we have to use something which is known as the magnetic variation, which we've already seen is depending on two factors, the time and the place. Suppose a bearing at the point P is measured with a compass and you got a figure of say 160 degrees, and you are required to convert that into a true bearing. What it means is that you have to get the bearing from the true north, but that is possible only if you know this difference or the magnetic variation. We've seen that the magnetic north is the point to which the compass needle points and does not directly point towards the true north but slightly towards west or east. The point towards which the needle swings is known as the magnetic north, and the difference between true north and the magnetic north is called the magnetic variation. And we've seen already that the amount of the magnetic variation depends upon two factors, time and place. Now this chart shows the amount of magnetic variation differing in different parts of the world and also in different parts of our country also. For example, the zero line shown by this green line passing towards the central India, and towards up north, if you see, it is going in the positive direction, plus 10, plus 20, and if you go down towards south, the variations are negative, minus 10, minus 20, minus 30. What it means is that from this point, if the place is at Delhi, for example, the competition is held somewhere in Delhi or in and around Delhi, so it will be positive error. And if you go down towards south, say in Kochi or in Calicut where your IGC happens, so the variation there is negative. Now the figure which has been taken from the internet may not be the correct figure as on date, because we have already seen that the magnetic variation changes with time also, and the variation with time is also not constant. It changes gradually, and even the change each year is not constant, but the difference being negligible, it is taken as a constant value. These figures, the variations, are shown on the top margin of a map. The top margin will have a statement giving the magnetic variation, and that particular map would have been made in a particular period or a year. And to bring this up to date, the point of time when you are taking the actual measurements, the year of issue of the map is to be noted, and for every year that has passed since then, the applicable change which will be given in that statement has to be annually subtracted or added depending upon the place. Now here, minus 1.59 degrees is for a place in Kochi, and plus 1.29 is a line approximately taken between 0 here and now these lines show a variation of 2 degrees. So this is 2, 4, 6, 8 and 10. So it is somewhere Delhi is placed here somewhere in the middle, so it is taken as 1.29 plus 1.29. So we have already seen that there are three norths. One is the magnetic north shown by the magnetic compass. True north is the line joining north and the south pole, and we've got a grid north also, which you see from the map, a topo sheet. Now to convert magnetic to grid north, we generally assume that the true north is same as the grid north. So towards the north of this line, towards Delhi for example, if you have to convert from magnetic to grid north, you have to add, and if you want to go south of this line and you have to convert from the magnetic bearing what you have taken from the compass and have to convert it into grid north, then you have to subtract this figure. Whatever we had discussed in the previous slide is being pictorially depicted in this slide. This is the magnetic variation. The minus 1.29 is what we had seen for Delhi, and it is plus 1.59 in Kochi. So what is minus and plus mean? Minus means the angle. Now you have the magnetic compass reading available with you. Now you are required to convert that into the true north, and for all practical purposes we are assuming that the grid north or the north as depicted in the topo sheet is the same as the true north. Then if you are required to convert the magnetic north into true north for Delhi, you have to use the negative sign here, which means the angle has to be measured anti-clockwise from the magnetic north, right? Which means the true north lies towards which direction? West of magnetic north. On the contrary, for Kochi it is plus 1.59. It means that the angle measurement has to be taken in the clockwise direction. It also means that the true north here in the case of Kochi lies towards east of the magnetic north. Now here you see the entire grid system. Basically, if the globe has been flattened out, you see all these parallel lines. In terms of the globe, these lines are supposed to converge somewhere here at the true north and somewhere here at the true south or south pole or north pole. But for a map sheet, you have these assumptions that the northings and the eastings are parallel. They don't meet at a point, they don't converge at a point here. See, this is the north pole, this is the south pole, these are the lines. It's supposed to be converging here, but in terms of a map, it is parallel. Now here we'll do some calculations converting magnetic to grid north. For example, the place chosen is Delhi. You know the magnetic variation is minus 1.29 degrees. Now we are assuming that the true north is same as the grid north, or the magnetic north which you have found out from the compass is supposed to be converted onto grid north and the same to be plotted on the topo sheet. That is why it is taken as grid north here. Now here is a temple. (60° east is the direction of the temple with respect to the magnetic north, or 60° east is what you have found out from your magnetic bearing. This is the magnetic variation which is to be used here to convert, that is negative 1.29 degrees east. So in order to convert this magnetic bearing to grid in terms of grid north, you have to add 60° and 1.29 degrees. So the total is 61.29 degrees. Now this is what I was talking about as far as the magnetic variation depending upon the time factor. This is the top portion of the topo sheet. The edition is given here, first edition, and there are certain other statements given out here. Mean grid north in this sheet is 0 degrees 45 minutes west of true north. Grid north is the north as depicted in the topo sheet. It is 0 degrees 45 minutes west of true north. So here if you see, this is the true north, this is the grid north. So that is towards west, 0 degrees 45 minutes west of the true north. And it also tells you something about the magnetic variation. The magnetic variation from true north is about 1 minute west in 1965. You see the time factor has come here. This map sheet edition is of 1965 vintage, which means in 1965 the magnetic variation from true north was 1 minute west. So this is 1 minute west of the true north. This is grid north, 0 degrees 45 minutes west of the true north. Now let us see if the year changes, what happens. See, this is the first edition map of the same place, 1980. Place is Kerala. Correct. Now see, the mean grid north in this sheet is 0 degrees 46 minutes. So in about 15 years, there has been a variation of 1 minute. But the variation is towards west only from the true north. We're talking about the grid north here. And now you see the variation in the magnetic bearing. From true north, the variation is about 2 3/4 degree west. Now it has increased from 1 minute to 2.75 degrees west. See the difference? And again, next 15 years, 1995, what is the change? It is fluctuating between 0 degrees 45 minutes, 46 minutes and 45 minutes. So for all practical purpose, from 1965 to 1995 and maybe even beyond, if you don't have the next 15-year edition map, for all practical purposes you can take the mean grid north 0 degrees 45 minutes west of true north, and the magnetic variation again has now decreased a bit. From 3/4 it has come down to half, 2.5 degrees west, slightly decreased. So this is what we were talking about, the variation, magnetic variation in terms of time. Now for example, we have worked out for 2019 there's a 24-year gap. Now here, if you see, if you've taken the reference map as this one, 1995 edition, it says decreasing by about 2 minutes annually. Magnetic variation is decreasing by about 2 minutes annually. So for 24 years you've got 48 minutes decreasing annually. So the magnetic variation in 1995 was 2.5 degrees west. You have to reduce 0 degrees 48 minutes from this. So you get 1 degree 42 minutes. So this is the magnetic variation for the year 2019 approximately. And now the difference between the grid north and the magnetic north would be 57 minutes west. Now how do you get this? You have to deduct 45 minutes from 1 degree 42 minutes. You will get 57 minutes. This is the prismatic compass Mark IV which you use in the army, but we don't get to use this because the vintage is quite old and we've got certain obsolete pieces. What we have done is we have bought off the shelf from the market, which is almost same. Now let us see what is back bearing. It is the bearing taken opposite of original position of the object. To make it simpler, let us see this example. You're standing here at the center and you've taken a magnetic bearing of 145 degrees east towards this temple. Back bearing is the bearing which is taken from this temple towards your own position. How do you do that? One method is you go towards the temple, reach the temple, look backwards, take a magnetic bearing that becomes the fore bearing at this place but becomes the back bearing of this place. Or else, while being here, if you are required to find out what is the back bearing, then there are certain rules. We'll see what those rules are. Now here in this case, the fore bearing which you have taken, or the magnetic bearing which you have taken at this position is 145 degrees. It is less than 180 degrees. So if the back magnetic bearing is less than 180 degrees, if you add that figure to the fore bearing, you get the back bearing at that place. 180 plus 145 is equal to 325 degrees is the fore bearing which you would get in case if you physically move towards the temple and take a magnetic bearing from this place. And what if the magnetic bearing is more than 180 degrees? You then subtract 180 degree from the fore. Supposing you are taken to a place wherein you are required to find out the magnetic bearing of an important landmark which you can see from that place, and you have to plot it on the map, then the first and foremost thing which is required to be done is the setting of map. Now setting of map is an important step towards finding own position. A map is said to be set or oriented when it is placed such that it corresponds directly with the ground. That is, when true north on the map, now here we are again referring to true north on the map. Why? Because for all practical purposes we have assumed that the grid north, which is the actual north shown by the grid lines is same as the true north. So true north on the map points to the true north on the ground, right? So we'll see the setting of a map by use of a compass. How do we set the map using a compass? You have to place the map, and on the map you have to place the magnetic compass in such a way that the grid line and the crosshair, the vertical crosshair of the magnetic compass are coinciding. Your magnetic needle may point towards the magnetic north, which can be anywhere, any direction. Now, setting a map requires that the magnetic needle, the crosshair of the compass and the grid line, they all coincide. They all lie on the same line. How do you do that? You have to turn the map and the compass in such a way that this is aligned. For example, in this figure, you have to turn the map anti-clockwise so that this line, because the magnetic needle will always point towards this is the magnetic north of that place. So you have to turn the map anti-clockwise direction so that the grid line, the crosshair and the magnetic needle all fall on the same line. There it is. Here the grid line, the crosshair and the magnetic needle are on the same line. What it means is that the north as depicted on the topo sheet and the actual north of the ground are same. So the map is set towards the north direction. The next step is to find your own position on the map. On the physical ground, wherever you are, you know the place, but where is that place on a topo sheet is to be found out using this set of rules which we'll be discussing now. The first step is to locate the general area on the map. Take a point or a landmark which is visible on the ground and is also depicted on the map. As we have seen earlier, map is a physical representation of the features, selected features, not everything. So the landmark which you have chosen on the ground, a physical landmark, is supposed to be finding a place on the map also. Take the compass bearing on the landmark, plot a line from the object on the map using the back bearing. What it means is that you take the magnetic bearing from your location towards that landmark, and using that plus or minus 180 degrees you get the back bearing. If the distance from the point, object, landmark is physically known or measurable, mark the distance on the line previously drawn using the scale of map. Now if the distance is not known or if it's too large, take another point on the map and ground and follow the same procedure. Wherever the two lines intersect, that is your own location on the map. Let us understand this using figures. Okay, let us assume that this is a topo sheet. These black lines are the grid lines, the northings and the eastings. And say for example, you know you are generally placed here. You are standing here. You've probably come from this road, got down here, walked up the gentle slope here, and you are somewhere near the top. There's another small hill towards the east of this hillock, and you are trying to find your own position on this map. Right now you have spotted a landmark which is visible to you on the ground as well as it is marked on the map, and this is another important landmark which is visible on ground also and also is marked on the map. The first step is to setting up of the map. After you have set up the map, you have to take the compass reading of the object. It could be a can be a temple or a survey tree or any other important landmark, and say the reading which has come, the magnetic bearing which has been found out is 60 degrees east. Now the next step is to find the back bearing, and as I've told you earlier, back bearing, how to find out if the magnetic bearing from this place taken is less than 180 degrees, you add that magnetic bearing to 180 degrees to get the back bearing. So in this case the back bearing is 240 degrees. Now convert to grid. This is an additional step which you may do. Now in the previous slides we have seen the difference between the grid north and the magnetic north was 57 minutes for 2019 year for Kochi, right? So the grid north has come to 41 degrees 3 minutes. Now you place the service protractor onto the map in such a way that the arrow or the center point coincides with the landmark. Now since your back bearing of 241 degrees is greater than 180 degrees, as I told you earlier, the service protractor is to be placed towards the left of the landmark, so that when you take the compass reading clockwise, it starts from 180 degrees at this point and moves up to 360 degrees here, right? Now you measure the angle which you have found out, that is the back bearing 240 degrees, using the service protractor, and mark it on the map which is shown by this red point here. So 240 degrees is somewhere here, because this is 0 clockwise, this is 180 degrees, 190, 200, 210, 220, 30 and 240 lies somewhere here. Next step is to join the landmark and the point and extend it backwards. Now what we had seen in the last slide is that if you know the distance and if it is measurable, you're standing here, and if it is say 100 meters, 200 meters, even 300 meters, if it is measurable, there are no defiles here, there are no broken ground here, you can easily walk up to this place and measure. Then what you can do is you just measure this distance on the map and you can find out your own location. And supposing if this distance is too far, it is not physically possible to go across to this landmark and measure this distance, then you have to repeat the procedure for this landmark for the survey tree also, and you get another line from this survey tree, you extend it to your own location and backwards. So wherever there is an intersection between these two lines is your own position. Now in the practical test of map reading, you will be required to show a landmark which is depicted on the map and identify the same object on the ground. So there are various steps involved in it. We'll go one by one. The first step would be to find your own position, which we have found out in the previous slide, and the instructor there or invigilator there will tell a landmark on the map. You have to depict the same or show the same landmark physically on the ground. So what are the steps involved? You will be using the service protractor to find the grid bearing, say 60 degree on the map and the distance. Convert the grid bearing to magnetic bearing is the next step. Now this is an additional step which may or may not be done. You have to add 57 minutes to grid bearing. I've taken 57. This is actually to be found out from the map sheet, but may not be possible or practically feasible, because generally when you get the map sheet on the ground for the test, the portion wherein this statement is given will be folded inside and you'll not be able to make out unless the invigilator purposefully gives out that statement and tells you to find out the grid bearing as well. So here I've added that step. So from the previous slides we have found out this is the variation between the grid and the magnetic north. You have to add 60 degrees to it. You get 60 degrees and 57 minutes. Now with this bearing, use the prismatic compass to identify the object on the ground using the approximate distance. Say for example on the map it has been shown as 300 approximately. You have used the service protractor to find out the distance as say 300 meters. This is where the concept of judging distance, which is a separate chapter for the senior division, comes into play. So on the ground you should know approximately where 300 meter lies, and from the magnetic bearing fix 60 degrees 57 minutes, and in that direction approximately 300 meters you will find that landmark. That important landmark could be a temple. It would be an easily identifiable landmark, for example a observatory or a temple. So that is how in the ground to map an object on the ground is shown to you and the same is required to be shown on the map. The principles of the steps are something which is very similar to map to ground. The cadets can themselves find out from the basics what has been shown in the video, and they can easily find out the steps for ground to map exercise. Feedback and questions are most welcome. I will try to clear the doubts in the next session.